When the killer reaches C scale, he kills 3 people. The second person who he kills is called Michael Pike, which was witnessed by a 10-year-old boy and his mother, and they got a very clear view of the gunman and what happened. So the Daily Telegraph interviews Jordan, the 10-year-old boy, and he gives an account. I managed to interview his mother on audio. So Jordan speaks first in this interview, and then his mother. And I'm just going to show that interview. So this person, she saw the gunman for over 30 seconds.
We were just walking past a curve just near the shop. So this person on his bike just came up, and then the driver just came, shot his back wheel shot, and then shot his face on the cheek there. And then he just stared me and my mum in the eyes, and then he just drove off.
Right. I'd seen him approaching the back wheel of Mike's car with the left-hand wing, front wing, very, very slowly, and thought, what on earth is he doing, as you would do. Right. And then I heard 2 noises. I didn't even know there was shotgun at the time. It was just 2 really loud bangs.
Right.
Then it seemed like 30 seconds a minute, stirring at us, and then phew, off he went. So that was on the news.
Right.
Obviously, the picture of the man, it looked nothing like what I thought that I'd seen.
And just tell us description of the vehicle and the person in the car.
It was a Citroen car. I can't remember the registration because it's something that I just don't think of. The person that I thought that I'd saw was probably late 20s and black spiky hair.
What was the length of the hair?
Probably 1.5 inches, spiked up.
Okay.
So then he just drove off. I don't know why he'd do that. I don't know who would do that, but then I know who would.
You found out?
Yeah, him. It's shocking, really. I don't know why a person would do such a thing like that.
Now the events in Whitehaven, witnesses, you've got 2 taxi drivers who knew him. You've got, sorry, more than that, there was a guy around the corner who also knew him, Paul Wilson. These are all people who knew him, who were reporting what happened to the police. The woman in the sandwich shop didn't know his name but knew him by face, knew how old he was. So these people are all giving descriptions to the police, right? This went out on air quite early and was not repeated, this particular report.
It's just gone 12:30, time for a summary of the news with Heather Wainwright.
There are unconfirmed reports that 2 people have died in a shooting incident in West Cumbria. Armed police are looking for a man said to be in his 30s with a shaven head, driving a dark grey or silver Citroen Picasso. The registration ND55ZFC.
So how can they get that so wrong in his 30s when all the people who knew him when he first pulls up to the taxi rank? Now that clip there, Channel 4 made a documentary all about these killings, and they actually played this radio broadcast, but they cut out the bit where it says in his 30s. They cut that out. Now if they're not trying to hide anything and they're just wanting to produce a report on what actually happened, why do they need to cut that out? Alright, now I'm not sure, from this, I'm not sure whether Derrick Bird killed all of them, one of them or none of them. I don't know. I suspect from this evidence that there was a second vehicle involved. Why they haven't put a taxi sign on top of it, I don't know, and perhaps Derrick Bird had just fitted that sign. I'm not sure. But it also looks as though there's possibly an operative involved, at least in C scale. So I wanted to get all of the witness statements, right from the first witness to the last. So I contacted the coroner, and I said I would like to obtain copies of the court transcript and the coroner's report for the Cumbrian shootings case involving Derrick Bird. They then came back to me and said, can you give me some more information, please? Can you give me more details about yourself and tell me what is your interest in the case? I said, well, as far as I'm aware, I thought the reports should be available to the public, and as far as I'm aware, there's no need for me to divulge information to the coroner about who I am. Okay, so they then came back to me and said, well, only interested persons as defined in the Coroner's Act and the relevant rules are entitled to request notes of evidence from inquest proceedings, there is no general right for the public to have copies. It was for that reason that the coroner asked what your interest in the case was. So I then said, right, okay, well, my interest in the case is to find out an accurate timeline of events so that we can create an accurate documentary film we are involved in producing for television. All of the information publicly available is second-hand and therefore not necessarily accurate. The coroner's report will be used so we can be sure of the facts in our TV documentary. So the coroner then comes back to me and asks me a whole load of questions. Dear Mrs. Hall, to enable me to further consider your request, I shall need more details. Your address, your role in the preparation of the documentary, who has commissioned the programme, the producer, where it is proposed to be aired, which TV channels, the scope of the programme, are any of the victims actively participating, what exactly are you seeking? David Roberts, Her Majesty's Coroner. So he's clearly considering giving me information, otherwise he wouldn't be asking those questions, right? He's wanting to know who's making this documentary. Is it the BBC? So I answer all of his questions. There are the answers that I've given him, perfectly honest answers. And I've said to him that we are seeking to produce an accurate film about what happened that day and also why it may have happened. In order to get the facts as accurate as possible, a copy of the coroner's report or transcript is something we need in order to check what we have discovered so far is accurate and to see if there is anything we have missed in our interpretation of events. Now, he could have given me those documents from the coroner, from the inquest, and said, okay, I'm going to give you them, but don't release them on the internet. If you're going to use any quotes from them, can you have it approved by me? So he could have put conditions on there, knowing that all I'm trying to do is represent the truth. But what did he do? He wrote to me and said, having considered the matter and the issues involved, I do not consider that you are a proper person within the meaning of Regulation 27. What? What has he talked about? I'm not a proper person, right? So I thought, well, let's have a look at Regulation 27. And it says in Regulation 27, the coroner may provide any document or copy of any document to any person who, in the opinion of the coroner, is a proper person to have possession of it. So there's no actual rule on who can and who can't have the documents. It's just whether the coroner thinks you're a proper person. So there it is on official royal crested letter-headed paper, Richard D. Hall is not a proper person. So I'm going to get the t-shirt printed tomorrow. I've been living for 46 years on this planet under the illusion or the delusion that I was a proper person. Okay, so I thought, well, I've got a communication channel opened up with the coroner, so I'm going to put to him some of what I have learned. I've said, regarding the CCTV footage in Whitehaven showing the incident at Duke Street, where shots appear to be fired from a vehicle into the shops along Duke Street, we have learned that the gunman drove past the taxi rank on Duke Street twice, and the footage so far released is the second pass of the taxi rank, when the gunman did not get out of their vehicle. Why are the events which occurred minutes earlier on the first pass of the taxi rank not available on CCTV? This would have shown the gunman get out of their vehicle. Because if you see someone get out of a vehicle on CCTV, you can judge their build, the way that they walk, their hair, everything, his gait. So you're going to be able to identify whether it's him or not. All we've got is images of a vehicle. So I'm not convinced, based on the evidence that I've seen, that it was even there. Why has there been no CCTV, still photographs, or any images at all, either during or before the events, showing Derrick Bird with a gun in his hand? One image was released showing a taxi from the side, which appears to be a person on their handheld radio. Why have witnesses described the gunman as being in his 20s with short dark hair? We have a very reliable witness who gave evidence at the inquest, who has given us a detailed statement. This person watched the gunman at close range for between 30 seconds and a minute. The gunman had short dark hair and was in his 20s. Why do witnesses we have interviewed insist the gunman's silver Citroen Picasso was definitely not a taxi? We have 3 reliable witnesses who state this, some of whom gave evidence at your inquest. In the Channel 4 documentary, the witnesses are all saying it was a taxi. We've got witnesses who are saying it wasn't a taxi. Why is it assumed that David Bird was murdered by Derrick Bird when there is no eyewitness testimony to this event? What evidence links Derrick Bird to the murder of David Bird? Why did police issue a description of the gunman, which was read out on a public radio station, stating that police were chasing a man in his 30s with a shaven head? And why does the vehicle, which was recovered in the woods, which is alleged to belong to the gunman, appear to have a taxi sign on the roof, when the gunman's vehicle, in all but one CCTV image, has no taxi sign on the roof? Finally, were any of these points raised at the inquest? So he then comes back to me and he says, coroners cannot enter into correspondence answering the type of questions you raise. Suffice to say, there was a huge investigation into the facts relating to these cases. All relevant evidence was before the jury, which they heard over a period of 4 weeks. Well, I wouldn't quite agree with him, because in an inquest, the coroner decides everything that the jury's going to see. It's not like a trial where you've got someone sticking up for Derrick Bird who can insist certain things, and you've got two sides. Both sides can submit evidence. He decides everything that the jury sees. So if there's certain evidence which isn't quite as palatable for their story, he could quite easily leave that out. Now, I mentioned a potential motive as to why someone might want to get rid of Kevin Commons, who was the second person killed by Derrick Bird, and it's to do with the Cumbrian floods. And people have said to me, well, that seems a bit extreme, Richard, killing all of those people just to cover up the murder of a solicitor. Why didn't they just bump him off? And I agree with that. I think it does seem a bit severe, but maybe there was more than one reason why these killings occurred. Now, I mentioned Marcus Nixon, who took over the legal action from Kevin Commons when he was murdered, and I rang Marcus Nixon. Now, he did move law firms. He works for a different law firm now, can't remember the name of it, but he continued to pursue the legal action against United Utilities with this other law firm. And I rang him, I think it was November last year, and he told me that that legal action had recently been dropped against United Utilities. All right? But one thing he didn't tell me was that he had been under investigation for fraud just last summer. Now, this guy is a successful medical negligence lawyer, probably got a bob or two. I think it's unlikely that he'll be doing false accounting. So I think these charges could be trumped up, right? So perhaps, and I'm only saying perhaps here, this is a way of getting him off this case. And the person who took over from Kevin Commons solicitors, a guy called Timothy Frost, he died a few weeks back of an extremely rare brain tumour. Just pointing that out. Don't know if it's relevant.